Hello, welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Beth Ann, and I read a book that I'm pretty sure might be a perfect science fiction book, at least for me, giant caveat, right? But that book is The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. And I bought this book as a total whim in an airport. I was traveling back actually from a weekend reading retreat with my friend in January and knew that I was going home to a snowstorm. And it was pretty clear I was going to at least have some flight delays. My flight ended up being totally canceled, and I had to spend a surprise night in Chicago before I made it home. And because of all of that, I panic bought an extra book, even though I had my Kindle. So I had all the books in the world at my fingertips, and I had like two physical books in my backpack, but the panic set in of like, what if I run out of a book or my Kindle dies or whatever? And I panic bought this, not knowing anything about it, just loving the cover. And it just blew me away. Oh my gosh, I could not put this book down. It is so good. So, this is sci-fi, as I mentioned, and most of the action takes place in space and on a couple of other planets. There's some action on Earth, but very little. So in this world, humanity has left Earth, or at least some of humanity has left Earth. Earth has been just totally trashed, complete environmental catastrophe, and the interstellar uh, replacement or like culture humans, right? So they've spread to hundreds, maybe thousands of new worlds and new planets that have all essentially been opened up and exploited as resources. So, different planets produce different resources, and the people who live there are primarily involved in that. Some of them are very poor, essentially, basically just agrarian communities that are growing different types of biological resources. Other planets sort of get upgraded, developmentally speaking, to be city planets that have a lot more resources. And then what ties the whole thing together, of course, there's interstellar space travel, where travel points are linked by beautiful space stations that are in the shapes of birds. And as we see through flashbacks, one of the main characters of the book, and of course now I'm totally blanking on her name, Fumiko, um, is the sort of brilliant mind that engineered these space stations and came up with their design. So we get flashbacks because Fumiko was born on Earth over 1,000 years ago before the events in this book take place. Because of cryosleep, she's actually still alive in this book. That is not a typical thing for most people to have those extended lifetimes, but she's incredibly wealthy and is an asset for the main corporation that runs all of this. And so that's one of the things that I really loved about this, was that it took what's true in terms of like capitalist corporate America, basically, and thought about what it would look like if that paradigm spread out into space. And it's horrible. And this poor woman, Fumiko, is sort of caught in the middle of it because she's the one, the brilliant mind, who kind of made it possible. Most of the drama and the tension of the book centers on a young unknown boy who appears in wreckage of something crashed to a planet that is one of these very poor agrarian resource planets of this interstellar society. And he is picked up by one of the supply ships that runs a regular run, picking up resources and bringing them to the interstellar space stations. The captain of the ship, Nia, really bonds with this nameless boy and becomes his parent. But this boy, it turns out, has a hidden secret, a hidden power that develops as he approaches adulthood, that is a incredibly sought after and exploited thing. And so he becomes completely exploited and abused by the system. And the back part of the book is Nia's search to regain him and refine him and save him from that machinery. And it's just, the writing is just so gorgeous in this book. But as I mentioned, I love, like, one of the things, so it's a perfect book for many ways. Perfect book because The characters, even if you don't like them, like I disagreed with a lot of what the characters had to say or like different decisions that they made, but they were just beautifully well done people. So just that gorgeous writing that really captured these personalities in honestly fairly sparse text and with fairly sparse like things happening on the page. You can just totally rip through this book. Um, so that is just a beautiful piece of, I think, literary writing. But then also it just does what to me perfect science fiction is, which takes truths about our current world and just exposes them by putting those truths into a new context. So in the case of this book, for me, that is sort of the like corporate domination of society and life. So I would just read a paragraph about that where we get a passage that's describing after Fumiko had sort of designed these interstellar space stations that enable human colonization of space. This paragraph is describing just the seemingly inevitable process by which, because we have such bad systems, those just like a hungry monster just like take over the universe. Um, and I should also mention that the names of the stations that are shaped like birds, they also have bird names. So Pelican is the one that features in the plot of the story, but there are several of them. So the ones that will come up in this paragraph are Macaw, Barbet, and Thrasher. So we're talking about space stations when we talk about those. Okay. Life spread to Macaw, to Barbet, to Thrasher, Desiree and Palatian, to the outer reaches and the worlds with skies yet unscarred by man-made contrails, and the city-planet capitals whose every block, every turn, had been planned decades in advance. The routes were paved by corporate map makers who voyaged the yet uncharted currents of the pocket, cataloging the distance and time debt before signaling the colony ships and then the company traders who looped the systems together in the binding web of commerce. The ships dragged behind them the years, the contracts signed and stamped in undying digital ink, and the spires of city planets were borne upward with the swiftness of bamboo, and, as it had been since the beginning, the steadfast tradition of hierarchy was continued in this fashion, the wealthy living above the clouds and the unlucky down below. And though it was lost on no one the strangeness of this progress, of how humanity had come so far, but still there were people who never saw the stations or even the sun, no change was made to the structure. They lived and died in the Minotaur's labyrinth of the city-planet substrata, deep in the shadows of the glass towers, the steam plume underworks, the vomit of trash flumes, where there was no time, no progressive sign of the turn of the century or the millennia. Only the heat and the daily stench of corpses wedged in the ventilation chutes beneath the streets, where they would be flashed into ash come next month's heat cleaning, and soon forgotten, as Allied space stretched its jaw and continued its swallowing of the stars. Its enlisted soldiers diving in and out of the pocket, skipping over the eras of its history as they brought back the contracts of newly acquired planetary systems and the noble wealth of their resource worlds. Oh, this book was so good. So, 5-star read. Loved it. Would recommend to anybody who loves sci-fi. The term pocket that came up in that passage, I forgot to mention, is just the way that the author explains interstellar travel, sort of the uh, uh, you have to be able to travel fast, right? If we're going to have interstellar travel actually happen on a time frame that would enable human expansion like that and human travel. And the pocket is sort of like wormholes. Basically, you're kind of entering an alternate dimension where time moves differently, and so you can then pop out in different places. You can't just do it willy-nilly, so there's specific routes where you're able to enter and exit the pocket to get to different parts of this interstellar civilization. So yeah, just reading that passage, I already want to read this book again. I mean, it was just incredible. So have you heard of The Vanished Birds? Have you read The Vanished Birds? And what did you think about it? Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.